Okay, hi there. My name is Carmen from Switch On Health and welcome to tonight's free webinar on HTMA. If you're watching this live, please do stick around for comments and questions at the end. We're very excited to announce that there will be a $50 credit from us here at Switch On Health for one lucky attendee to put towards your study. Lara also has a very exciting giveaway also, and I'll let her explain that to you during her presentation. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're welcome to pop any questions you may have into the comments box below, and we promise to get back to you. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you like what we do, please do click on the subscribe button, because the more subscribers we have, the more we can offer, and we look forward to offering you more. So tonight, I'm very happy to be joined by Naturopath Lara Ryan from InterClinical, and she is here to present an introduction to HTMA, so hair tissue mineral analysis. And that is a safe and non-invasive analytical test that measures the mineral composition of your hair. And it is a very valued screening tool used by practitioners. Over to you, Lara.
Thank you. Thanks. It's lovely to be here. Thanks everyone for having me tonight. Now, hopefully my plan tonight is to share some really interesting information with you about hair tissue mineral analysis. So we had a great introduction there. Thank you so much. Hair tissue mineral analysis, or HTMA, is a functional pathology test where we're actually taking a sample of hair and we're analysing it for the essential minerals that are within that hair, and also any toxic and environmental metals and minerals that might be in the hair as well. And of course, anything that is in our hair, the only way for it to get there is through the delivery from our blood supply. So it tells us a lot about what's going on in our body. So to move straight into it, now, HTMA is a service that we provide here at InterClinical Laboratories, and we are a company that is based in Sydney. So if you're ever in Sydney, you're very welcome to come and say hello. And we have been doing this for around 30 years now, so lots and lots of experience. We've seen the results come in from all of the testing, and we see patterns and we see pictures and we see toxins coming in. So a lot of experience here in terms of environmental toxins, in terms of looking at bio-individual nutrition, and really using this testing as a foundation to your naturopathic and natural health consultation. So there's so much information, as you'll see today, that can get pulled out of the results of one of these tests that is really going to direct the way your treatment goes and make sure that your treatment is really individual to the patient that you're seeing that's in front of you. So let's have a little bit of a look. So hair tissue mineral analysis, it is a pathology, and we get a hair sample, as you can see in the picture there, and we analyse that sample and interpret the information that comes through about the nutrition that's based in that hair. So what we're looking for is the effects of people's diet, obviously, what's happening with their nutritional supplementation, because while most of the time nutritional supplementation is fantastic, sometimes it's not working in our favour, and it's really interesting to see when people over supplement, or what we also call stacking, where they're taking a whole ton of supplements and they're maybe not actually all working synergistically together for that person, and we can see that when we do the testing. We can see how people react to stress, to toxic metals, and even genetically inherited mineral patterns as well. So a lot of information for just one easy, non-invasive test. So how HTMA works within your consultation and within the clinic is what we're going to have a look at tonight. We're going to have a look at why you might be interested in using HTMA testing in your clinic. We're going to look at how you would talk to a patient about it and how you would say to them, look, I want to do some functional testing, and here's why I think it's important. Obviously, it's very important for us as practitioners to understand the report and be able to present and interpret that report and be able to use that information to actually explain to our patients why we want to have the treatment plan that we do. And then obviously we want to come up and close that consult with a really good treatment plan that is going to get them better quicker, because we know what we're targeting. So I want to talk to you just first up really quickly a little bit about hair. And one of the fantastic things about being able to test hair like this is it's obviously non-invasive. It doesn't hurt. There's no blood taken. It's not a needle. people may complain if they don't like having a little bit of their hair cut, but it's not a lot of hair to take. So it's really easy. And also hair doesn't go off. It doesn't need to be kept cold. It travels well. All of those reasons are a great reason to use hair. And look, hair is actually used globally as a testing mechanism. The World Health Organization recommends using hair for testing, particularly in developing countries where they're looking at environmental toxicity. Again, because hair, easy to take, doesn't need all of the hygiene of taking blood, it stores well, it travels well, and they can get a really good picture of what heavy metals might be within, say, a mining town or something where some new industry is being built and maybe environmental precautions aren't being taken and people are being hurt by those toxins. So hair is a really useful thing to use. And as I said, World Health Organization recommends it as one of the primary types of testing for environmental toxins. So what are we looking at? When we get our hair sample and we put it through all of the equipment to measure what's in it, we're looking at 37 different minerals. And as I mentioned, some of these are our nutritional minerals. Some of these are minerals like lead, cadmium, arsenic that can be harmful to us. We also look at something called ratios. And a ratio actually means the comparison between two minerals. And probably the easiest way for you to be familiar with that is the zinc-copper ratio that you might have heard of in your studies, and how it's really important that we've got a certain amount of zinc as compared to a certain amount of copper. But that works for all of our minerals, and they work in balance with one another, and each of those works in balance with other minerals as well, like the cogs in a watch rather than a seesaw effect. So when we're testing, we're looking at 37 minerals and 27 of those really important ratios. We can get really precise levels of those toxic elements, so we know what we're working with. We've got the latest evidence-based reference sources. So we've looked at so many tests. We've got this great library of resource about where our reference ranges should be for where levels should be at for a person of this age in this environment, which is important. There's 4,000 different calculations and comparisons done as those reports are churned out. So lots of looking in depth. And there's some significant information that's not included in other tests. And for any of you that are doing functional testing or perhaps work in a clinic that does functional testing, there is a lot of really good stuff about, but you do pay for it, and particularly your patient. I know functional testing can sort of run up to $600, $800 in some consultations for people, whereas this is a much more economical test at the moment, being under the $200 mark. But we're getting information about nutrition, we're getting information about toxicity, about how the body is detoxing, about how the body is managing stress, about thyroid, about adrenals, about our metabolic rate. So there's a whole lot of stuff we can work with that in some instances will point us towards some more testing that we might want to do. But there's also just that great foundation information to work with in clinic. So the laboratory that we use, TEI Laboratories, they've been specialising in hair testing, and they've done over 1.7 million different tests. So these guys know what they're doing. This lab is absolutely set up. It's all they do. They use an ICP mass spectrometer. So that's how the hair itself is reduced down into a sludgy liquid and put through the spectrometer, and that will actually be looking at all of the minerals that it contains. Really rigorous quality control. The staff have been there for a long, long time and know what they're doing. And as we said, that interpretive report is based on thousands and thousands of these tests being done. So to help put in your mind where hair testing falls in terms of all the other pathology testing, it's really important that we look at it in comparison to blood and to urine. Now, when we test someone's blood, which is the absolute standard, and there's a lot of great stuff that we can get from a blood test, what we need to understand is that our blood is a momentary picture of what's going on right there and now. The blood is obviously our body's most important fluid, and it will respond at any given time to what is going on both externally and internally for that body. So if someone has their blood taken and they've just had breakfast, we're going to see higher sugar, we're going to see higher fat content in the blood. If someone has been really stressed in getting to the path lab, we're going to see different stress hormones in the blood. And the body will change. If someone is under stress, it will change mineral content. It will, hold on to things like sodium, and it will let go of things like calcium. So the blood is always in homeostasis the body will send hormone messengers at all times saying, we need a little bit more of this. We need to pull a little bit of this back into the tissues. We need to up this for now. We need to down that for now. So blood gives us that momentary snapshot in time. And it's, you know, if you're getting sick, the white cell count will be up, things like that. So it's all very there, and it happens, and it can change very, very quickly. On the other hand, we've got urine, and urine is another one that we test very often. Again, can be useful for great things, but urine is excretion. This is the body getting rid of things that it doesn't need anymore. It's an excretionary way to get rid of things. So definitely, if you've just maybe walked through a big cloud of lead dust or something like that, we're definitely going to find lead in the blood and probably lead in the urine as the body gets rid of it. But within 2 days, the blood itself is going to have cleaned that lead out. It knows it's a poison. It's going to move it straight into what it can't pee and poop out. It's going to move it straight into the tissues. So we know that that's not going to be there for many days later. Same with the urine. It's the way we excrete and get rid of things. So we're looking at the waste products of the body. Now with hair is actually a living tissue. So with hair, we are actually getting a picture of what's been going on over a longer period of time. So hair grows at about 1 centimetre a month. So if we like to ask for a sample that's the 3 centimetres closest to the scalp, if we can get that cut, and that 3 centimetres is going to give us a picture of what's been going on for this person over the last 3 months. So it's not the here and now of the blood. It's not the excretion of the urine. This is actually living tissue that grows within the tissue, that is supplied by the blood cell. And as all of those, the nutrient information, the heavy metal information is available in the blood constantly passing through, that gets laid down in the hair. And the hair then hardens, and we've got a picture of what's been happening nutritionally. I liken it a little bit to when you cut down a tree and you can see all of the rings within the stump of the tree. That's what's going on in the hair. It's laying down a history of what's happening with our nutrition. So there's some great stuff that this can do for us in clinic. It obviously gives us an immediate response to what's going on. What are the concerns and problems? It can direct us to other testing, as I mentioned, and it gives us a really good analysis of the trends that are happening for this person. And that helps us put together a preventative treatment plan as well. So, you know, we might be able to say, look, if this person continues on, they're really lacking in calcium, and we can prevent that now and help them with any problems that might happen with low calcium in the future. It gives us confidence, and that's what I find really useful myself in private practice, is I'm no longer going blind. I'm no longer going, well, I think this is what we need and their immune system seems to be down, so we'll do this and a bit of this. When I can accompany all of my knowledge that I have with testing that's there on paper in front of me and in front of them, so it works as a little bit of a third party that confirms everything for them, it gives us a really good place to start and goals to set about, all right, this is the direction that treatment needs to take. So that's why it's so useful to us in clinic. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a look through the report, which is what you would get as a practitioner if you sent off your own or a patient's hair sample. So this is what it looks like. There's a Profile 2 report is about probably 5 to 7 pages long. The first 2 pages are these coloured reports that have actually got an indicator bar of how high or low all of our nutrients are. So you look at this. The other thing that I've just highlighted here at the top of the chart, obviously this is all of our patient information here, and what the chart can also tell you is their metabolic type. And when I say metabolic type, I don't mean necessarily how well they can lose their body fat. Metabolic type in this instance actually means how the body itself is oxidating and operating, and at what rate the body is going. What rate is the thyroid going? What rate are the adrenals going? Is this person in a slow metabolic rate where maybe the adrenals are sluggish, the thyroid is sluggish, or is this person in a really fast metabolic rate where everything is going very quickly and we may be prone more to anxiety? We might not be digesting our food well enough because it's moving through too fast. There might be a whole lot of other things that are going on as well. And we can see this from the mineral patterns. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more for you now. So just to go back, you can see here this person is a slow 1, and we have options of being a slow 1, 2, 3, or 4, or someone can also be a fast 1, 2, 3, or 4. And it's an indicator of their oxidative metabolic rate of their whole body, which is really interesting. And where this stems from is, and I'm sure that you've learned this through your studies, is our autonomic nervous system and how our autonomic nervous system runs within the body. So if we are running on a slower metabolic rate, we're usually in our parasympathetic dominance. So this is, you might have heard of this phase that our body is being in something like rest and digest. So we're calmer, we're resting. If we go too far with this, we can be quite sedative. We can be quite slow. This is quite often where a chronic fatigue might build in if someone's become really unwell and they've got very stuck in a parasympathetic state. This is where we can maybe lack a lot of energy. And what we find in a mineral sense is in this place we've got elevated calcium and elevated magnesium, which are our really sedating minerals that are slowing things down. On the other hand, we might have someone who is in a very fast metabolic rate. So they're in what we call their autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic dominance. So this is people that go fast. They're our A types, they're anxiety, they're stressy, they might be in fight or flight and very stressed and worried about something. They're very stimulated and upbeat. And what we find with the minerals in this case, that it is phosphorus, potassium, and sodium that are the minerals that are increased in these people. So we can actually see these patterns as we're working with people. And just to give you a little bit more understanding, I don't want you to get thrown by these charts, but I just want to explain the link between looking at someone's minerals and how we know their adrenals, their thyroid, that whole endocrine system is working in with the mineral pattern. And how I want to use this chart for you. So let's go to the fast side first and start in the middle in this box. So we're going to start here with the endocrine system, with those glands. And you can see here we've got listed the thyroid, the adrenal cortex, the adrenal medulla, and the anterior pituitary gland. Now, you don't need to remember all of this, but I just want to explain it to you. So when someone is going very fast, all of these glands have been activated. So the stress hormones have activated these glands. So they're going to send hormone messages. And if we look upwards in this chart, they're going to send messages to the kidneys about renal absorption and to the intestines about the intestinal absorption. And what they're actually saying here is hold on to, we're stressed, hold on to sodium and potassium and hold on to phosphorus because we might need it to run from the saber-toothed tiger. Let's get our muscles ready. Let's get our energy resources ready. So hold on to sodium, potassium, and phosphorus. If you come back to the middle and we now follow down, the messages that these endocrine glands are going to send again to the kidney and the intestine is to say, let go of all that magnesium, let go of all of that calcium, because we don't need to be sedated right now. We need to be activated. So these messages get given to our body about how to release or store different minerals. So if we were to test someone and have a look at this, we can see this person's been operating in a really fast state because they're letting go of all their calcium, magnesium, and they're retaining and have high levels of their sodium, potassium, and phosphorus. It's amazing stuff. Our bodies are incredible the way they do this stuff. So I'll then move you over to the other side of our slow person, our person who's in parasympathetic dominance. And again, if we go to that middle box there, we've got the organs involved, which is the pancreas, the parathyroid, the adrenal cortex, and the posterior pituitary. So these glands are now sending out other messages because we're now exhausted, we're now tired, we've run from our saber-toothed tiger and got safely back to the cave and we're allowed to collapse in a heap and we know we're safe. So the message that's going to get sent out to the body, if we move up this chart, it's going to say, all right, now we want to hold on to the calcium and the magnesium because we want to be sedated. We want to be slowed down. So hold on to the calcium and the magnesium right now. If we move downwards in that chart, we'll see the messages that our glands are sending to the kidney and to the intestine is now let go of sodium and potassium, let go of the phosphorus. So just let them go. So you can see how in a slow person, we end up with high levels of calcium and magnesium and low levels of sodium, potassium, and phosphorus. So when we test the hair, we can tell what's going on for somebody in their endocrine system and with their stress levels, their thyroid, and their adrenals, which is really interesting. So we do have this classification of our minerals, of our nutrients. So there are minerals that work and nutrients that work to sedate us, so that it will have a calming effect on the nervous system of the body and on the cells of the body. And these are our calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper and chromium. And we all know when we're stressed or when our muscles are tense and when, you know, there's a lot going on, we take magnesium, we take tubs and tubs and tubs of magnesium. And this is a little bit of the science behind it. It is sedating. It is a sedating mineral, but so is our calcium. So calcium, and remember, there's always the old wives tell of have a nice warm glass of milk before bed. There's actual foundation to that in that our calcium is sedating. So some vitamins you'll find sedating are D, B2, B12 and choline. Now we've got these nice minerals in the middle that are transitional, so they can go, the body will use them either way depending on what's going on. They're used sort of more in the production of the hormones, and you can see that they're nice balanced ones. B5, B6 really important for the adrenal cortex. And then we've got these stimulatory nutrients. So these are those nutrients that are going to pep us up, that are making energy, that are giving our muscles what they need to run, that are going to important in having our heart rate beating strong and having our senses be really wired and turned on. If you're anxious and fight or flighting and running, you're going to have a lot of this mineral pumping around your body. So this is our phosphorus, our sodium, our potassium, our iron, our manganese and our selenium. And I've just realized this is all in abbreviations of minerals. So this is probably sending you all back to biochemistry. So if you do happen to have a handy periodic table chart next to you, you'll know what I mean. But trust me when I'm saying the names of the minerals, that's their symbol on the periodic table. Then also stimulating in nutrients, we've got A, E, B1, B6 and our PABA. So all important, and we can see how they're both important, and the autonomic nervous system will rely on them to balance us out between our parasympathetic and our sympathetic. So we've got these subtypes now. So stress really affects that neuroendocrine system and all of our body's nutritional requirements, as we know. And there's different types of stress. We often think of stress as being true emotional. You know, it's when we're upset with our relationships, when we're changing jobs or things aren't going well, financial stress, changes in our family. There is that horrible emotional stress that really causes us to be in fight or flight for a long time because there's a lot of fear about the change that's going on. But stress can come from other places. We can have physical stress, and this might be trauma after an accident. This might be an athlete who, even though they're in top form, they're pushing their body to the absolute limit. And that is a stress on the body. It really is. And we've also got things like infectious illness. And I think probably one of the best examples of that is how we're now seeing these cases of long COVID, because people have had a really terrible virus and they've gone into a chronic fatigue post-viral state. But that's because of the effect that the virus has actually had on our neuroendocrine system. It's actually put the body into shock, and the endocrine glands are secreting all of these messages about crawl back to the cave. You fought this big fight with COVID, go back to the cave now and rest. So people can get stuck in that system. We've also got stresses that are environmental. And this is where our toxic metals come into play, chemical exposure, sometimes the medications that we're on. So there is also these environmental things, and all of them act as stresses on the body. And we'll be able to see through this testing that the body is under stress, and then it's up to us as the practitioner to do the detective work to really try and see where that stress is coming from. So they do talk about stress in terms of the stress response, and there's a few phases that work with this. So this is the general adaptation syndrome known as GAS. You guys may have heard of this. It was a theory brought out by Hans Sellis many years ago, and he just talked about the way that we respond to stress and how that works. So stress very much comes from the messages in the brain, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, and it involves the adrenal gland. And that's what puts together our HPA axis that I'm sure that you guys have heard about. So there's phases to how this works. And our initial phase is that alarm phase. That's when we get the shock. That's when we get the bad news. We have the accident, we catch the illness. That's when the body gets the initial shock of, uh-oh, something has happened, and we need to go into high alert to manage this. We need to start pumping the adrenaline. We need those good minerals to make our muscles work. We need sugar released from the liver so that we've got energy to be able to do what we need to do. This is when we start going, let's run. We've seen the saber-toothed tiger, so let's start running. Then after that, we move into the resistance phase if the stress is ongoing. So hopefully we run from the tiger, it's all over, we can shake it off and our system will balance out again. If that tiger's got legs on it for days and can chase us for days, we then move into a resistance phase. And this is where that stress is long-term and ongoing, and our body has to hold itself in a stress phase for a very long time. And this is where we start relying more on that cortisol hormone rather than the straight adrenaline. So, and cortisol is that hormone that keeps us in stress, that causes us to gain body weight because it thinks we're in a drought or a flood or food is scarce, something's going on. But this can be, you know, the long-term illness of someone that we care for. It can be ongoing financial stress. It can be ongoing stress of being a carer or having a long-term illness. So that's when we go into that second phase, which is resistance. And of course, if we can't get out of that and we can't reverse that, we're going to end up in the exhaustion phase that we're all very familiar with. And there's different nutrients that are involved in each of these phases of stress. So in that alarm phase, you can see there are C, D, E, B1, B6, B12, which probably look really familiar because when people come to us stressed, this is what we always want to prescribe. But our minerals are important too. And when we're in the alarm phase, the minerals that the body will use up in this alarm phase are calcium, copper, cobalt, sodium, and selenium. So again, we're going to get a picture. If we test someone's hair here, we're going to see, all right, what's being used up? You know, we can tell a little bit about how the body's coping with stress. When we move into the resistance phase, we've got a different set of nutrients and of minerals that are going to be used within that phase. Because remember, now we're in this long-term cortisol phase. So different messages are being sent from the endocrine system about how energy is made and supplied, about how we're able to relax and sleep. There's other things going on now. So we're using different nutrients. And then when we have finally hit the wall and hopefully collapsed in the cave, or maybe just collapsed on the spot where we are, we're now in the recovery stage. And this is where the body needs that rest. We need to be sedated and we need to have rest. So you'll see here we have got some of those nutrients we talked about earlier that will really help with that calming and that sedating, which is the calcium and the magnesium. Selenium's another one. And we've got a lot of our B vitamins here that nourish as well. So really interesting stuff. So we, again, when we get the hair mineral test back, we can see what's going on and what phase we're at. And this chart here is a chart that we supply to all of our practitioners, and it helps you to understand where your patient is at. And remember I said we can have in the orange here, our slow patient who is a 1, 2, 3 or a 4. And these numbers are those alarm stages of stress, or the stages of stress, sorry. So 2 is our alarm stage, 3 is our resistance phase, and 4 is our exhaustion phase. So you can be a slow metabolizer and move through each of those phases. You can be a fast metabolizer and still move through all of these phases. So for a slow person, we really hit the wall, we collapse, we get tired. For a fast person, we get wired and tired. We get busier and busier, we get more and more anxious, our brain goes more and more, but we're also crashing and burning a lot. We're doing that cycle of the crash burn a lot because we want to be up and be fast, but we're crashing down. So we've still got within this our fast one. You know, initially we're responding quite well to stress, then we go into a 2 to that alarm phase, then we move into that resistance phase, which is that real wired and tired, and then you've got this 4, which is that exhaustion phase where they hit the wall. So the picture you could have here is sort of your high flying corporate person who goes and goes and goes and goes, and then you don't see them for a couple of months because they've disappeared to a retreat or an island or their country house and just collapsed and been exhausted for a little while. And we can see these patterns in the hair mineral testing, which is what we can see. So what we can look at here is how this relates to the adrenal function and to the thyroid function. So if we get somebody come to us, as we said, that fast person that's now hit the wall and they're in their chronic resistance and exhaustion, phase 4, if we follow this all the way down, we can see that their adrenal function has decreased. And on a chart, that's going to show us a low sodium as compared to magnesium. So that ratio will be out of whack. Or we can see that their thyroid function has also decreased. And on the chart, this shows us them having high calcium as compared to potassium. So we'll be able to tell from our chart, this person comes up as a fast 4. We can see changes in the sodium, magnesium, calcium, and potassium, which tells us they've got decreased adrenal function and decreased thyroid function. Now, this picture is very different to someone who's a slower metabolizer, and they're just in stage 1. They're okay. They're just managing the daily stresses of life. So if we look here, if they're starting to move down the chart, what we might see is decreased adrenal function and decreased thyroid here as well. But these are a slow responder, so they're different. And you can see as we move along, sometimes adrenals will be increased, thyroid decreased, etc., etc. And the more imbalance that we've got between the thyroid and the adrenals, the worse someone's going to feel when we haven't got that harmony between the two. Okay, so I'm going to move on from stress for a little while, and we're just going to have a look at the charts themselves and just some basic, what nutrients are high, what nutrients are low, what am I looking at here? So let's have a little bit of a look at that as well. When you get your results back from your hair testing, this is what you're going to see. This blue chart is all of our good nutrients, and you can see the letters again along the bottom. See calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, etc., all the way along the bottom. The black bars indicate where your patient is currently at. Now, there's a reference range, as there is with all good pathology testing. So that white zone that is in the middle, and you'll even see there's a very faint line right across the middle there. This is our tight reference range. And if we compare that to a bell curve, this is the range where we've got 68% of healthy people fall within this range. So if that black bar comes up and falls within the white band there, you know that's pretty normal and average. 68% of thousands and thousands of people surveyed, that's where those minerals fall for them. Then there's a little bit of a wider reference. We go into a light blue area, and that is where 95% of the data falls. So 95% of people are going to fall within that range, and that's got the green bracket on it in that picture there. So again, we at least want to be within that bracket because it's telling us that's somewhat normal. Outside of that, we know that we're then looking at a high or a low reading, and all these columns are individually numbered. We design it in this way so that that reference range is very clear in the middle, but you will see the numbering is very different on every individual column because we obviously need different levels of all of our minerals in our body. So that's the blue one there, and this is all on page 1, is where we're looking at those essential nutrients for health. Next to that is this pink chart here, and this is the toxic elements. So this is where we come to look for, does this person have antimony, uranium, arsenic, beryllium, mercury, cadmium, lead, aluminium. We know these are some of our most toxic metals, and actually in the World Health Organization's most toxic substances in the world, in the top 10, lead, aluminium, cadmium, and arsenic, and mercury, sorry, are still coming up within that top 10. So they're very, very toxic minerals, create a whole lot of health problems for people. So when we're looking at this chart, you'll notice it's a little bit different. The white zone, so our good interval where we want things to be, is right down the bottom here. And ideally, we don't want any heavy metals at all, but that's not always the case. We do live in a world that is full of these things, and we eat plants that grow in the ground, and we breathe the air, and we drink the water, so it's impossible to not have anything at all. But we always want it within this white range. The higher it creeps up the top, the more of a problem that we've got with those toxic metals. There's also a little chart here, which is down the bottom, a green chart, and this is additional elements. So these minerals are not essential to us. They're not as essential as those ones that we talked about earlier, but we still need to have a little bit of them. They're in our environment, they exist in our bodies, they're not, unless they're not too high, they're not toxic. So we do just look at these additional elements here. And this is just another good sign so that we know that people are eating well. If all of these were really low, and actually this chart here, it's a little bit low below that white area here, we know that maybe this person could do with a bit more nutrition. Are they eating their leafy greens? Are they getting in what they need? Do we have a gut absorption problem? So this is going to get you looking at other bits and pieces. And sometimes you might see these high due to certain occupations, like you might see the tin really high or the nickel really high. And again, that's an indicator to us that maybe we do need to look if this person is in a little bit of a toxic environment. Okay, so moving on the chart, we're now on to page 2. So as I said, there's those 2 pages that will give you charts. And this is, I talked earlier about those ratios, and I gave you the example of the zinc to copper ratio. Okay, so we talked about them. So this is all of our ratios. So all of these ratios will indicate something going on within the body. You can see that first column there is the calcium compared to phosphorus. Next is sodium to potassium. Next is calcium to potassium. There's that zinc copper ratio. Then we've got sodium to magnesium, calcium to magnesium, and iron to copper. And the reason that we test these is because they really do need to be in balance. For example, on the very end there, you've got iron to copper. Now, copper, we need copper to carry iron into our red blood cells. So if we don't have any copper, doesn't matter how much iron we've got, it can't get into the red blood cell. But we need to have these two at a certain balance. So the ideal there, if we look right in the middle of that white zone, is 0.9. So that means we need 0.9 of iron to every copper molecule. So we want to keep this balance between the minerals. And if we lose the balance, it can tell us a lot about what's going on. For example, this person here, I can see has got quite low sodium compared to magnesium. So that tells me that this person is really struggling with their adrenals. Their adrenals are under functioning. They're pushing those adrenals. Because remember we said after long-term stress, we're going to have burnt through all of that sodium. They've crashed here because we haven't got the high sodium that we'd expect from someone in fight or flight. The sodium's really dropped off and we haven't got enough sodium compared to that nice sedating magnesium. So we're having trouble with energy here. So that's why these ratios are really important. They're the way that you get more depth out of your report too. So the other thing to talk about is when we look at it, it's very easy to look at the chart and go, oh, that's deficient, that's excessive, that's high, that's low, and we can go, that's what it is. But there's actually two ways I want you to think about the deficiency. So the first is what we would call an absolute deficiency. And you can see in the first lot of charts I've got there, that K there is for potassium. And we can see that this person has got really low potassium. So they are deficient. They're absolutely deficient in potassium, and that's where that lies. Then there is also something that is a relative excess, and this is where we again start looking at those ratios. So if we look here at, let's go again to the second one along that's got the red circle, the sodium to the magnesium. So we can see here that this person, it looks like they are really deficient in sodium because they've got very low sodium compared to the magnesium. But if we look back on the original chart, the sodium could be higher, but it's within the reference range. But when we compare that sodium to its buddy mineral that it needs to be in balance with and needs to be a certain amount of, then we can see that we've got a relative deficiency in sodium. So what we might not have picked up on the first chart, we might have gone, oh, look, sodium's not great, but it's okay. Then we flick to these ratios and we go, whoa, we have not got enough sodium to be keeping the balance for the sodium and magnesium in this person. So we are going to need to say to them, it's all right to eat a bit of salt. We do need some sodium back in this system. Okay, so that just explains that we can have that absolute deficiency, clear as mud, there it is, it's really low. And then we can have a deficiency or an excess that exists in relation to the ratio to those mineral buddies. Okay, and this is, again, I showed you that lovely periodic table and asked if you all had one. Every practitioner needs a good periodic table hanging around in their office. So one of the benefits of, and these are free, you can download them off our website or we can post them out to you. One of the benefits of this beautiful periodic table that we do here at InterClinical is on the back, you will actually have this fantastic summary of what health conditions are related to mineral deficiencies. So it will go through each of those minerals that we've talked about, all of those essential minerals that we need, and it will talk about what conditions may result if we don't have enough of that mineral. So it's a really good way to check. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I go, oh, you know, this person is low in copper, and then it's spot on. They've got the rheumatoid arthritis. They've got, you know, weakened muscles. They've got the inflammation going on. So it's a really good little reference. And again, it just makes me want to talk to you about that real importance of those mineral interrelationships. So knowing how these minerals work together with one another is sometimes actually more important than just knowing those mineral levels alone from being high or low. So there's always a spectrum. There's always a spectrum of deficiency and of excess, but one of the things that we really know now is that we can actually, you know, we have this term that we talk about that is someone can be overfed but undernourished. So they're eating plenty of food, but they're not getting the nutrients in. And this is something that we can look at here, is we can go, okay, are you actually getting the nutrients in the diet? And are you getting them in the right amounts to be balanced the way the body needs to be so that the body itself can be balanced? So it's really important information. Now, the other place that we are going to look at a balance of our minerals is we're going to look at our good minerals to our toxic minerals. Because what happens with these minerals is that our good minerals will protect against those toxic minerals. And one of the best ways I can probably explain this is if you imagine that you have got a bus and there are only so many seats on the bus, let's call it the bone bus. So we're building bone, and here's the bus that pulls up the bone bus, and you know we need to take on calcium because that's what the bone needs. If we're really high in lead poisoning, lead has got an attraction to the bone. It will go in place of calcium. So if that bone bus pulls up and we've got more lead than we've got calcium, all of the lead will take the seats on the bus and the calcium won't get absorbed. So what we're looking at here is the good mineral that protects compared to the toxic mineral that can get in on the same receptor and create havoc. So if we go along and have a little bit of a look at our chart here, we can see our first one is calcium compared to lead, like I just spoke about on the bone bus. Here, we're doing really well. This is nice and up high into the white area. So this person's got plenty of calcium, and the little bit of lead that's in their system is probably not going to be a problem because there's plenty of calcium to buffer it. But if we move along a little bit to the middle here, this is our selenium to mercury. And what we can see is this is starting to drop. So this person has got some mercury toxicity, which we don't want, but even more concerning is that they don't have enough selenium to protect against that mercury toxicity. So there's two ways that we can tackle this problem. We obviously want to get the mercury down, and there's ways to do that naturally with minerals, but we also want to increase their selenium because we know that by having more selenium on board, the selenium is going to get the seats on the bus rather than the mercury. I hope that makes sense. And there's a whole lot of ratios that we look at there. Okay, so each of those toxic elements that we talked about, the mercury, the arsenic, the lead, the cadmium, they all have what we call an antagonist. So this is like the lead has got the calcium will get on the, we want the calcium on the bus. So having more calcium antagonizes the lead. It says, oi, shoo, off the bus, not enough room. And this works for each of our toxic metals. And this is just a little list here. Again, it's on that lovely chart, the periodic table. It talks about the antagonists. So if we see someone with high arsenic, we're going to look at their selenium, their sulfur, their vitamin E, and their beta carotene, because those nutrients will move the arsenic out and they won't allow the arsenic to be absorbed into the tissue. If we've got the high lead that we talked about, what works against lead? Calcium, magnesium, copper, zinc, iron, manganese, selenium, sulfur, vitamin C, any of those. And I might hear you go, which one do you choose? How would you know? How you know is you look at their individual chart. So for this individual person, what are they lacking in that we can see on the chart that we know would be allowing lead to take up seats? And this is the beauty of doing the HTMA, is that we can see for this individual person exactly what they need to move along and push out those toxic metals. So we're not just following a protocol written in a book or something that we've Googled. We've actually got results for a human being in front of us that says this person has got high lead and they've got low calcium. So the solution to this problem is to bring up the calcium, because that's going to force the lead out of the tissue, and it's going to mean we haven't got the level of lead there to get onto the bus. So I hope I've explained that one for you really well. That's the importance. That's how we do natural chelation and natural detox, and how we get rid of heavy metals without using harsh pharmaceuticals. We know that these things have their natural elemental antagonist, and we've just got to pump up all of that, and those heavy metals will move on out, which is really good. Quick notes on children, if anyone's going to be testing children. All children should have a fast metabolic rate. They are growing, they are moving, they're making brains, they're making bones. So we would always expect a child to be a fast metabolic rate. Teenagers usually start to fall into the similar patterns of their parents. So we will see things being very much the same. If the parents are slow, a slow pattern might develop much earlier in the child. And look, we've done lots of tests of families, we do lots of twin studies, and we see it time and time again. And quite often, if we get little babies that come in that have got quite interesting patterns or maybe some heavy metals, we'll always recommend that we get mum tested as well, because the unfortunate thing with environmental toxins, with heavy metals, is they do cross the placenta and they do come through the breast milk. So if we've got bub who maybe hasn't been living in the world too long, and we think, how did you accumulate all this toxic metal in your short 8 months on the planet? We will always test for mum as well, and that can give us some more pictures about things too. So now I just want to have a little bit more of a look at the report. So as I said, we get the charts, but then we also get the report that comes with it. Look, and this is just following on from how we can have bio-individual things. So this is showing us here that, well, here's a set of twins, and while they are genetically the same, what we can see in testing is that they've got a very different biochemical makeup. And you guys have probably heard the saying about, you know, genetics loads the gun, but it's the environment that pulls the trigger. And that's what this is trying to say. These two guys might have been born with the same genetics for heart disease or for you know, inflammation or something like that, but depending on what they're exposed to in the environment, what food they're taking in, what they're breathing in, what they're drinking in, those different things can be expressed. The genetics are the same, but it's the environment around us and within us that'll actually cause those genetics to be expressed. Okay, so we talked earlier, so this is where we're actually looking at the bio-individuality of our patient. So we know here, even despite genetics, if we can look at their mineral content, we're going to see something different. We learned earlier about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic characteristics of someone. So we know that there are certain things that will be attributed to someone who is going very, very fast, who's in sympathetic dominant. And we talked about anxiety, elevated blood pressure, but there's also health conditions that are specific to that. So when people are constantly ramped up and always going faster, there's things that we'll notice. There's a lot of inflammatory stuff you'll see there. There's allergies, which you can imagine because the immune system is pumping along faster. So it's reacting to things. So we know that we've got a lot more going on. And then on the other hand, we've got that parasympathetic dominant person, and there's a whole list of illnesses, of imbalanced states that will go with someone who's in parasympathetic. And this is usually a little bit slower. So we might see things like hyperparathyroidism, hyperglycemia, hypertension, hypoadrenia, viral infections because we're not responding well to things, lupus and autoimmune because we're going slow and we're not able to do that big defense. So all of this information that we get from this test is starting to paint pictures for us. And in the report, I know this seems like a lot of information at the moment, but when you get your report, all of this information is written out for you. It's all really clearly explained. It's all written out. So you just have to read these results and talk through them with your patient, and you're going to look like you're really, really smart, and it's going to tell you things. So this is exactly what the report looks like. It says this person is a slow one, and here's what we can expect to see. And this is the point where your patient's going to go, how did you know that? That's amazing. Yes, that is what's happening for me. We also have this lovely little chart in the report that looks at the trends. So this is what this means is, so in this report, this particular mineral pattern that this person is displaying, what we've seen in thousands and thousands of other reports that have this particular mineral pattern is these illnesses. So people that have this mineral pattern are prone to allergies, are prone to bradycardia, are prone to calculus. So we can see it doesn't mean the person's got it right now, but it does mean if this person doesn't maybe change their ways, or we can't get their nutrition better, or we can't improve some of these deficiencies, that this is potentially what's going to happen. And it's quite interesting. I often find with these, I might just pick out a few, you know, if there's something listed on there like insomnia, I'll say, oh, so tell me, how's your sleep been lately? You know, are you struggling to get to sleep, or are you waking up through the night? And they go, yes. How did you know? What's going on? So quite often this will correlate really well to what your patient is telling you, which is fantastic. And the beauty of it then is it's actually going to go through and tell you why. It's actually going to give you a list of, you know, why are allergies coming up? Because of the iron. Why atherosclerosis? Because of the magnesium. So again, you can say to someone very cleverly, you know, look, it's, you know, I'm concerned that there might be some osteoarthritis here, and why I'm asking that is what we're seeing is really high calcium to magnesium. And this indicates that we've got a trend towards soft tissue deposition of calcium. And this might give us the development of osteoarthritis. So you're going to sound really, really clever, but it's all coming from the report and what we found. Okay, there's things that will be recommended in the report. The report makes supplement recommendations, it makes food recommendations, it will talk about contraindications, what not to eat, what not to take, what's going to affect your hormones. So there's great information that you can quickly fly through with this. These are the relationships that we talked about, that all of our minerals will have a synergistic and an antagonistic effect. And these are some great little charts. I'm sure this looks like a huge mess when you see it for the first time. But what it actually talks about, and I'll use the vitamin one just because it's a bit clearer, is that things will antagonize one another. So vitamin A, vitamin E can antagonize one another. They're both fat soluble. They both use the very similar receptors. So we might need to dose A and E a little bit away from one another. This is all available on our website, but it will help you explain what things work together and what things don't work so well together. And when you start learning about that, you start reading labels on supplements and thinking, oh, that's actually not going to work. That's not very clever. So for example, here's our calcium relationship wheels. So here's what works against calcium. We know that lead does. We know that cadmium does. So, and even some of our other minerals, they've got to work in a different balance and they'll antagonize one another. So there's a great book that we put out that's got all of this. And as I said, all of these antagonism wheels are available on the website as well. But again, it's just to point out that we need to understand that minerals balance each other. They work as buddies that work together in synergism, or they can really work to repel each other. And we can use that antagonism or them repelling each other to our favor when we work with these toxic metals. So this, again, it's in the report. This person is showing cadmium. Here's where you might find it. This person is showing aluminium. Here's what it might cause to the body. It can accumulate in the lungs, the brain, the liver, the thyroid. And here's some potential sources of that aluminium as well. So you can start asking questions. You know, are you living in this environment? Are you eating these foods? The report will also give you some supplement recommendations. So it will actually go through what it's recommending this person needs and a dosage. And this is something you can stick to strictly, or you can use it again as a bit of a guideline. Like I can see here, this person needs some parasympathetic support. They need some adrenal support. We need some Bs. We need some support for the digestive system. They're not getting enough nutrients in. So the report's saying, help this person with their hydrochloric acid so we can actually get some nutrient in. It will also recommend different foods and recommendations as well. It's just a guideline. You're always the practitioner, but there's always some gold in there that you can rely on with it. Again, we'll have some of those dietary suggestions, what's best for this fast or slow metabolizer, what's going to have nutrient, recommend foods that are high in the nutrients that they need. And it will tell you foods to avoid that might have nutrients that are antagonistic, because this works even in the food that we eat. And here we go, some contraindications. So this person does not want zinc because their zinc is already too high. All right. And there's lots of stuff here that will keep you learning with this. We've got loads of online training with this. We do a big training once a year. We go to all the capital cities. If anyone out there is anywhere near, Canberra is on this Sunday. And then in September, October, we've got Byron Bay and we've got Hobart. We have done all the other capital cities, but if anyone feels like a weekend away and would like to join us, we do these full day trainings, but we do a lot of online learning as well. We can talk you through sample reports. We've got all those resources of charts that we can show you and loads of research papers. If you're doing any sort of assignments or anything on minerals, do give me a buzz because I can definitely help you out with resources. Okay, and this is just some of the things that we have got coming up. We talk a lot about things, and we even do a practitioner mentoring group. And look, every time you do a profile 2 with us, you can ring us for a free half-hour call. So if you want to do that for yourself, if you want to do that for your patients, when you do a profile 2 test with that report that we just went through, you can ring us up, book for half an hour, and we're going to take you through what the report is telling you, give you some language and some words to use with your own patient in clinic, and really be able to help you. And this is a great book that we've got available too. So website, a huge amount of stuff there. It's going to show you how to take the hair. There's a video on how to cut the hair. It's got all those wheels. It's got all that evidence-based studies. So wealth of stuff in there. I'd really encourage you to register with us. And I'm going to put up a little QR code in a minute. But we did mention earlier there was a little offering from us to say thank you for joining us tonight. And usually your HTMA test costs $198. But what we want to offer for all of you, because you are students and practitioners, and this is so important to know this testing and also to look after your own health, is we want to offer you over for the next 2 weeks that you are welcome to do your own hair. You can test your own hair for $125. And that does include that free support call as well. So give us a ring, you can email us, you can download from the webpage and get a referral form, and you're very welcome to do that for $125 with the free prep call, and that will really make you feel confident and really engaged in the process of hair testing, because it's really, really useful and amazing tool, and we would love you guys to have the experience of that, and there's nothing better than doing it yourself with someone. So that wraps up my talk for today. There's a QR code. Feel free to put your phone up to that and snap a little QR, and that'll take you through to the link to register for us. So thank you for joining me, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lara. What an awesome presentation, and such a really valuable resource for practitioners and for students. So yeah, so much useful information in, it was fantastic. Thanks, Martin. It's not just a test to see what your deficiencies and toxicities are. Okay, you're low in zinc, we better supplement with zinc. It tells you so much more. And the stress effect on the neuroendocrine system, and the role of the vitamins and minerals in there, the toxic, the deficiencies and toxicities, but the relationship, how important that is as well. Really interesting. So I did actually think of it as well, and someone has just asked, what if the person is bald? Is there an option there? It's probably one you get asked all the time.
We get that question all the time. So look, with most people we find, this is Anne. Anne is also is our researcher here at HTMA. So look, even with men, if they've got some hair left, what we recommend is to, when they're doing their close shave with it, collect the shavings in a bit of paper, and it might take 3 or 4 shavings. We need enough hair to cover a 20-cent piece, about a teaspoon's worth of hair. So if we're really pushing it with that, just keep collecting that hair. We will accept beard hair as well, and if we need to, other body hair can also be used. We like head hair because that's what all of the reference ranges are built on, which is really important, and other body hair is more prone to having soaps and residues and things like that on it. But yeah, we can do that. Even if they've got a little bit of hair left here that they're shaving and doing a close clipper with, if we can just collect that over the next 3 or 4 clipper rings until we've got a teaspoonful of it, we can test that.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. So you can get just like tiny little shavings, and it can all add up to that sort of 3 centimeters that you need. Awesome. Yeah. So what I might do is, if you're watching this live, we'll stop the recording in a moment, and then we'll open it up for questions. So remember about our $50 credit as well. So if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching until the end, and learn more with Switch On Health.